County, Joanne Dungu is filled with joy as she expects her 9th child. But everything would change after the birth. There's an untold story inflicting misery on thousands of women.
Be inspired by ordinary Kenyans beating the odds through extraordinary determination. Watch M-Pesa Foundation's Letters for Good this Sunday on NTV.
This week on Cars with Big Boy Trev, we preview the Dakar Rally-inspired Toyota Hilux GR Sport 3 and take a look where this beefy Hilux can hold its forte against the rivals like the Ford Ranger Wildtrak and the Nissan Navara Pro 4X. Ever wondered how ABS works? We demystify how this crucial system works and how it is important in your well-being while on the road. And finally, we check out BMW's most important SUV, the BMW X3. We check out its design, technology, feature performance. It allows you to explore the full potential of this particular engine, safety and practicality. Catch this and much more on the Cars with Big Boy Trev this Sunday at 5 p.m. only on NTV.
Mortein Doom, with its trusted formulation, it provides protection in seconds. So spread the Mortein Doom message of how we, you and I, can fight to end malaria.
Mortein Doom, Kenya's #1 choice.
Wiki hii katika kupatana.
Ladies and gentlemen, Terry.
Me and my friend we have been so good friends. She had a boyfriend and his name was Peter.
Tulipatana na yeye shule, tukamari, tuko na mtoto mmoja.
Peter and I met through my friend. After like 3 months hivi ndo alianza kuhit on me.
Nilikuwa na shuku.
Kuna watu wengi.
Watu wawili ni wapita.
Yeah.
Sikuwa najua ni wapita.
Countries across the world are currently grappling with climate change, a situation that has greatly contributed to frequent and severe droughts in Kenya, negatively affecting livelihoods, ecosystems, and the economy. As a way of mitigating this challenge, the government of Kenya has continued to implement drought resilience and climate adaptation measures to reduce vulnerability and exposure. The National Drought Management Authority, NDMA, is mandated to coordinate the management of drought risk in the country with a view to preventing their slide into emergencies.
Sawa. Mesema tunaanza na DP.
The Global Peace Leadership Conference will convene in Kenya from June the 25th to the 27th at the Radisson Blu Hotel. This event will gather delegates from Africa and around the world to explore and discuss strategies for promoting peace, development, and cooperation. Engaging policymakers, educators, faith leaders, government officials, and other stakeholders, the conference aims to share sustainable peace-building measures, evaluate development frameworks, and formulate community-oriented actions. Don't miss out. Visit www.gplcafrica.org to learn more and register today.
So thank you so much.
Kikohozi cha muda wowote, kutokwa na jasho kwa wingi usiku, uchungu kwenye kifua, afya kudhoofika, tafuta matibabu. Labda ni TB ni ugonjwa wa kweli. Ukipimwa matibabu yapo utapona. Daktari kushauri tumia dawa kwa nidhamu. Elimu tupashane tupige vita TB. Pimwa TB waishi poa. Pimwa TB waishi poa.
This is NTV.
It is the 16th day of June 2024. A very good afternoon to you. Happy Father's Day to all fathers and Eid Mubarak to our Muslim brothers and sisters marking Eid ul-Adha. My name is Melita Oletenges. You're just in time for NTV at 1. Now, a section of youthful leaders from Mount Kenya region are warning that their flaring rift between President William Ruto and his deputy Rigathi Gachagua could put the country in an unnecessary campaign mood, thereby derailing social-economic development in the country. The leaders at the same time expressed their fury that the intensifying squabbles paint an unpleasant picture of Ruto in Gachagua, which may lead to resentment. The leaders were speaking at Central Students Association's Leadership Summit in Thika, Kiambu County.
Mr. George, how your business model? I think it is possible, it is doable, and we want to encourage these young people here to join the bandwagon and also say it is our time. And you know, when we say it is our time, we are not saying that it is not anybody's else's time. Ama mtoto akisema anataka kuwa pilot, ukishaiona mapilot wameandamana ati kwa sababu anataka kazi yao. Sisi tunawaona na ambavyo tunaona, hatuwezi sema ati mimi naweza taka kuwa kaa rais. Kusema ukweli, siwezi taka kuwa kaa rais, siwezi taka kuwa kama naibu wa rais. Juu picha ambayo wametuwekea sio picha mzuri hata kidogo.
Now, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua is currently attending the consecration service of Anthony Mwaura Mambo as the Nakuru SCK Diocese Bishop, accompanied by a host of political leaders. The service is being presided over by SCK Archbishop Jackson Ole Sapit. Let's listen in.
Last week, when we were consecrating in Nambale, people kept on donating their time. So when we give one an opportunity to donate his time to 3 or 4 hours. So please, when you are given time, bring our greetings, because this is a day of goodwill, messages to our newly consecrated bishop. So the area member of parliament, please take the podium, and then we can progress. Asante sana.
Well, our very own Ruth Sarmwe is keeping tabs on that story for our subsequent bulletins at 7 and 9 p.m. Moving on, President William Ruto has joined world leaders in condemning Russia for invading Ukraine. The president termed Russia's aggression against Ukraine as unlawful, unjust, and against the international law. Ruto added that the time had come for parties to the conflict to demonstrate good faith, abandon unyielding attitudes, and soften their positions for lasting peace to be realized. The president said the globe must embark on the collective effort to resolve the war. He was speaking on Saturday in Switzerland when he joined other world leaders for the inaugural summit on peace in Ukraine. Some effects of the war, he said, have been felt by all across the world.
Kenya's position has been clear and unequivocal from the beginning. Russia's aggression against Ukraine is unlawful, unjust, and a violation of the fundamental principles of international law, which honor the sovereign equality of nations, upholds their territorial integrity, and advocates the peaceful resolution of all disagreements. As we embark on this journey to resolve conflict in Ukraine and throughout the world, it's time for parties to the war in Ukraine to demonstrate good faith, abandon intransigent attitudes, and soften their positions. I thank you.
Muslims around the world gathered today to mark Eid ul-Adha celebrations, praying and slaughtering in honor of Prophet Ibrahim, known to non-Muslims as Abraham. This is the second major Islamic festival celebrated by the Muslim faithful across the globe. Kevin Mutai has more details from Mombasa.
The Muslim faithful gathered at Tononoka grounds in Mombasa to mark Eid ul-Adha celebrations. The festival shows the devotion of the Muslim community in commemorating Prophet Ibrahim's dedication to Allah's instructions to sacrifice his son Ismail. Here, the Chief Qadi Sheikh Abdul Halim called on Muslims to spread love within the community and shun the ills destroying the society, such as drugs and substance abuse.
Mwenyezi Mungu amesema watasimu bihablillahi jamian wala tafarraku, kwamba watu waweze kushikamana na wasifarikiane. Katika hii siku tunajua kwamba kuna makundi kadhaa, wengine wenzetu watafunga kesho. Sote Waislamu tuweze kujumuika, sote ni ndugu moja, wala watu wasitukanane na tuweze kushikana katika mambo ambayo yanatukabili, tuwe kitu kimoja.
The celebrations also mark a 10-day break of fasting, with some Muslims going for pilgrimage known as Hajj in the holy city of Mecca in Saudi Arabia.
Masala ya division ya Waislamu inapotokea katika masala ya mwezi, tumesisitiza katika khutba na kufafanua kwamba haya ni masala ya kielimu, ni masala ambayo inakubali ndani yake ikhtilafu. Watu wanaweza wakawa na rai tofauti, rai mbalimbali, lakini jambo la msingi ni Waislamu kubaki kuwa ni pamoja.
Former Mombasa Governor Hassan Joho, who held prayers at Masjid Khulthum Mosque, called on members of parliament to disregard their political party affiliations and unite to reject the proposed Finance Bill 2024. Joho terms the bill as punitive, citing taxes that will continue to make vulnerable Kenyans bear the brunt if passed.
You are sabotaging the people of Kenya. This is my message today. So therefore I call upon wale viongozi, particularly our parliamentarians, tafadhali, for once, kuna wengine nimesikia wakisema, oh, I report to one man, not even a political party. For once, listen to the voices of the people. Watu wanazungumza, husikii. Sijui mfanywe nini.
Sentiments that were also echoed by the Muslim clerics in Isiolo.
Ukiangalia revenue yetu iko juu sana. Hatuna shida ya kuokota pesa. Shida ni matumizi. Ukiangalia ripoti ya budget controller amesema ya kwamba 18.8 billion inatumika katika hali ya usafiri, both domestic and foreign trips, na hiyo 18.8 billion wametumia kwa muda ya mwezi 9 peke yake.
Sisi hatuwezani na hii finance bill. Tunaomba wakatae bunge kwa sauti moja, wakatae waangushe kabisa hiyo bill. Hiyo bill ni ghali sana na sisi hatuwezi. Hali ya maisha yenyewe imekuwa ngumu.
Slaughtering of animals is the climax of Eid al-Adha celebrations, sharing the meat and dining with the needy in society. Kevin Mutai, NTV, in Mombasa.
Eid Mubarak to our Muslim brothers and sisters. Now, as the rest of the world learnt about the botched surgery that happened to Samuel Kimani Wachira in 2018 after doctors at the Kenyatta National Hospital mistakenly operated on his skull after confusing him for a different patient, many don't know that Kimani quietly passed away in 2021. His family says he died as a man who was battling seizures and memory lapses. According to his family, after months of attempts, NTV's Ngina Kirori finally sat down with the family, who explains the tumultuous turn that Kimani's life, took after the surgery. Here's a preview of the story that will be airing on tonight's segment of Inside Out.
But was that 3 million shillings really enough for Kimani's loss of his abilities? 3 million shillings for someone whose brain was damaged? He never recovered, had a young family and eventually died. It was never enough. It is equivalent to murder. The government should look into that matter for future references of medical negligence.
After 42 years of life, the last 3 years of Samuel Kimani Wachira's life were fraught with more challenges than he could have ever imagined. It is a journey that started here, right behind me, at the Kenyatta National Hospital.
Quite a heartbreaking story. Be sure to catch that story by Ngina Kirori on our segment Inside Out. We now take a quick break right here on NTV at 1. Stay with us. We'll be back with more stories.
The Global Peace Leadership Conference will convene in Kenya from June the 25th to the 27th at the Radisson Blu Hotel. This event will gather delegates from Africa and around the world to explore and discuss strategies for promoting peace, development, and cooperation. Engaging policymakers, educators, faith leaders, government officials, and other stakeholders, the conference aims to share sustainable peace-building measures, evaluate development frameworks, and formulate community-oriented actions. Don't miss out. Visit www.gplcafrica.org to learn more and register today.
Kenya, twende mbele. NCBA, go for it.
Imperfections, blackheads. Try Garnier's Pure Active 3-in-1 Charcoal, powered by salicylic acid and purified charcoal to reduce pimple-causing germs by 99.5%. One product, 3 uses for a pure skin. Garnier Pure Active 3-in-1 Charcoal, #1 in South Africa, by Garnier Naturally.
Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. You're watching NTV at 1. Moving on, people living with disabilities were given an opportunity to showcase their talents and skills at PCEA Church in Kariobangi, Nairobi County. The church, which is led by Reverend George Obonyo, who is also hearing impaired, called on Kenyans, particularly employers, not to discriminate against persons living with disabilities. Most of his congregants comprise of those with hearing and visual impairments.
We support every man of disability because they are people just like any other person. The only challenge is that they are not able to do things maybe faster the way those without disability do things. But they are people, they are capable of being managers, they are capable of being church elders, they are capable of being youth leaders.
We want to bring all persons with disability to our different churches so that they can share the word of God and take part in the body of Christ. So in our churches we have interpreters that help us through interpretation. So even persons who are deaf or hearing impaired are not left out during our service.
The one who is reading is deaf. We have a person who is visually impaired doing the Bible reading, another one doing the Bible reading in sign language, and we have different disabilities that are represented in our church.
I'm glad that our church embraces people with disability, and we have had a place for them to feel that they are really part of the body of Christ, and to let them know that disability is not an ability. And we have seen quite a number of them doing great in life and becoming a role model.
Let's now get sporty. The Kenya Women's Under-20 national football team, Junior Starlets, is on course to qualify for the World Cup ahead of their second leg fixture against Burundi at the Ulinzi Sports Complex in Nairobi. The Starlets trounced Ethiopia 3-0 in the opening leg and have to keep or extend that lead to make the World Cup dream a reality. NTV's Hilary Anakea is at the Ulinzi Sports Complex and now joins us live. Hilary, how is the mood at the Ulinzi Complex?
All right. A few hours to the big match of the day. Kenya take on Burundi in anticipation for World Cup qualification. Remember, Kenya leads 3-0 over Burundi, and this is the second leg on Kenyan soil, and this place is buzzing with excitement. The Ulinzi Sports Complex, fans from far and wide, the youngsters as well as the older generation just here to cheer on the Kenyan team as we anticipate a historical moment in Kenyan sports, qualification to the World Cup for the very, very first time. As you can see, a few hours to go, but this place is filling up bit by bit, and I'd like to talk to some of the fans here, get their sentiments, what they expect, what this matchup, winning this match would mean for them as they head to the World Cup. So utuambie jina lako, na Kenya ikishinda iende World Cup, utajihisi vipi kama Mkenya?
Mimi kama Mkenya nitajihisi vizuri, na Kenya ikishinda tutafurahia sana.
Remember, this is the under-20 team, the junior starlets, and it's nice to talk to the young ones who are the same age, just to get their sentiments on what they think about their age mates. Let me move right straight ahead on to a gentleman here. Umefika hapa saa ngapi na nini imekuleta hapa mapema?
Hapa niliingia mwendo wa saa 6. Kile kilileta hapa ni kuona timu yetu ya wasichana ikifuzu. Naam.
Na unaona watafuzu ama Burundi watawalemea kidogo?
Wameshafuzu tayari. Tunangojea tu kuweka rubber stamp. Tushafuzu tayari. Naam.
Na World Cup tutaenda ama itakuwa ngumu ama tutakazana tuende?
Lazima tufike World Cup.
All right, let me take one more before I take you back to studio. There's a gentleman here in full Kenyan colors. Talk to us. What time did you come here? What are you hoping to see today?
I came here at around 12 noon, and this is the moment we've been waiting for, and it has really come. So we are here to make sure that we cheer our Kenyan ladies, our sisters, to make sure they go to the champions, to the World Cup.
Right. Well, there you have it, folks. Team Kenya is the rallying call. Few hours to kick off. We'll be experiencing the biggest match on Kenyan soil in recent times. Stay tuned.
The excitement is evidently palpable at the Ulinzi complex. Hilary and Akea, thank you for that report. And of course, we wish the junior starlets all the best as they have prospects to qualify for the World Cup. That's it for NTV at 1 on the 16th day of June. Many thanks for staying with us from the beginning to the end. A happy Father's Day to all fathers, including my father. And remember, today is also the International Day for Domestic Workers, and we shall be having that discussion in the next 40 minutes or so. On behalf of the team behind this bulletin, we wish you a good afternoon.
This is NTV.
The moment I feel my pain starting to fade, it's like I'm going back to myself on a really good day.
Panadol Extra releases you from strong pain. Panadol, release starts here.
The moment I feel my pain starting to fade, it's like I'm going back to myself on a really good day.
Panadol Extra releases you from strong pain. Panadol, release starts here.
Join us as we commemorate the essential contributions of domestic workers worldwide and discuss important issues and initiatives related to their rights and welfare. The Nation Media Group, in partnership with Oxfam, invites you to the live forum to celebrate the International Domestic Workers' Day on June 16, 2024 from 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. This will be broadcast live on NTV and social media platforms. The theme for this year is Protects Domestic Workers, respect and dignity for all. Hashtag Time to Care.
Get ready to have your mind blown. Hey! We're bringing you the hottest show in town.
Yo, vipi wazee, Nicky Big Fish hapa.
This is your boy Sharamaka Makao aka Mzee Mzima.
Unataki kwetu mix manze Timam.
From exclusive interviews with the biggest names in the game.
Siwezi sikia music na ukose kuona dance. Na wezi ona dance bila muziki.
Calligraph Jones, respect the OGs. Yeah!
To a DJ set that will knock your socks off.
5 to 6. It's all about Kwetu Mix, everybody.
And snippets from your favorite live performances. Don't miss out on the fun. Tune into Kwetu Mix every weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. only on NTV.
Kwetu Mix, brought to you by Nescafe 3-in-1 Creamy White. Changamkia your potential.
The moment is yours. Seize the day. Changamkia your potential with new Nescafe 3-in-1 Creamy White.
This week on Cars with Big Boy Trev, we preview the Dakar Rally-inspired Toyota Hilux GR Sport 3 and take a look where this beefy Hilux can hold its forte against the rivals like the Ford Ranger Wildtrak and the Nissan Navara Pro 4X. Ever wondered how ABS works? We demystify how this crucial system works and how it is important in your well-being while on the road. And finally, we check out BMW's most important SUV, the BMW X3. We check out its design, technology, feature performance. It allows you to explore the full potential of this particular engine, safety and practicality. Catch this and much more on the Cars with Big Boy Trev this Sunday, 5 p.m. only on NTV.
Mortein Doom, with its trusted formulation, it provides protection in seconds. So spread the Mortein Doom message of how we, you and I, can fight to end malaria. Mortein Doom, Kenya's #1 choice.
This is NTV.
जो रूह 5 लाख बिकती थी वो 16 लाख 17 लाख पहुंच गई। तो जो अच्छे प्रोडक्शन है वही इस्तेमाल कर पा रहे हैं, बाकी छोटे प्रोडक्शन ने माल ही डालने बंद कर दिया वो वाला। ये क्लाइमेट चेंज से ही है। जो खेत 10 मन फूल देता था वो खेत ने 2 ही मन फूल दिया।
And from there he was able to decide what he wants. But usually we send you what we have, and then we can communicate on WhatsApp, on email, whatever you want. We send you our catalog, and then you can able to see our payment plans are wide and depending with the property.
They have very modernized homes which actually resemble the setting hapa Marekani. Bedrooms zao pia ziko very spacious, and then the space is very spacious, like in the living room, alafu wako na balcony hapo. So I have the same setting niko na za manyumba za hapa, that's the same setting wako nazo. So that's why nilifutiwa na manyumba zao nikaamua kuziendea.
Where we are right now, currently we are in Thika at King's Orchid. This is the only property right now where we're selling from 1 million. Actually in the whole of Thika, it's the only one right now. It's from as low as 1 million to 4.8 million. So we have a studio, we have a 1-bedroom for 1.5, we have a 2-bedroom for 3.4, a 2-bedroom for 4 million, another 3-bedroom master in suite for 4.8 million. And the amazing thing about it is that there will be several amenities in here. We have high-speed lifts, community hall, borehole, a garden, a children's play area. So this is actually the in thing right now. This is the most beautiful and most amazing thing that will happen to Thika in come next year. And then now we have something in Ruiru, 2 bedrooms at 3.7. Then we have in Kilaleshwa 3 bedrooms with an SQ at 30 million. We have something along Lenana Road at 3 bedrooms at 19.5. We have something along Gong Road, 2 bedrooms at 9.5. So we actually have a variety of homes for you. And also if you want to invest in the upcountry markets, we also have houses in Nakuru, houses in Eldoret. So we have something for you, not only here in Nairobi, but actually outside Nairobi and also around Nairobi Metropolitan. Yes. And also on top of that, we also have office spaces. So we actually have every need for you, we cater to it.
Another key selling point for Jonathan was their flexibility in payment.
Muna agree na wao ahead of time. You can make a bigger payment this month. Kwa mfano, tuseme kama kila mwezi unafaa kulipa 500,000 shillings. But this month, labda uko na 700,000 shillings. You can pay 700,000 shillings this month. Next month inakukatishia ile pesa unaenda kulipa, unaona. So kwa mfano kama umelipa 700, next month you are allowed to pay less than the agreed amount of 500,000. Ulipe kama 300,000.
Our payment plans vary. Right now here at Thika, you have a payment plan of around 2 years because the project just started in January, and that's why now you have a longer payment plan to pay your deposits. But then for properties which are well advanced during the construction period, you may have 12 months, maybe around 16, 18 months, but we can always figure out a way to agree with you because we try to cater to your specific need. We tailor make a plan for you. So all our clients have different payment plans. The minimum will always be a 10%, 20% deposit. Then from there we try to do the math for you and see how comfortable you can be in making these plans because we don't want you to feel pressured in making the payments.
And when it comes to advice,
they're really good and they can help them through the process. Properties are very genuine because they see everything, every transaction, like kila kitu is very professional and they're always lawyers when you are involved. So hakuna kitu naenda kulose. If you invest with them, hiyo ni sure bet, you get your faida ya pesa yako.
these are some of the reasons that Jonathan chose King's Developers, a decision he says he does not regret.
Some people invest for different purposes. Kuna wenye wana invest wakuja kuishi pale eventually. Kuna wenye wana invest ndio wapate quick money yenye unajua kila kitu ukifanya hapa Marekani you have to pay taxes. The more properties you have, the more property tax you pay. All my kids wamezaliwa hapa. So our watoto nataka in the future wakae with inheritance kind of. So sitaki wakuja kugrow labda wa struggle ku start life and start unaona. Nataka at least wakigrow life yao isikae too easy na isikue too hard. wapate some foundation yenye wataendelea na maisha mazuri.
As Kings developers, why we're encouraging our diaspora family to invest back home, number one, is that we have already solved a problem for you, whereby if you want to invest in something that has good high returns, something that is well placed in locations that are safe for you, convenient for you, we already have that for you. And the good thing about us is that we're giving you a payment plan that is well within whatever you're working with. And so we are encouraging you because number one, you get a high ROI for what we have. Number two, you already know where we are placed. Number three, we're giving you something that for now, you may not be able to build a house when you're abroad, but now we're already solving it. We're giving you a diving board where even if you come back home, you're not starting from scratch. You already have a ready home. So by the time you're trying to sort yourself out and see how well you can do things around in Kenya, you already have a house with Kings developers. Real estate is the best investment because it shows, you can't hide it. It's either it's there or not. So real estate is the best because you can actually see it. Number two, people are always looking for homes to settle in. There's always urbanization that is happening. There's always modernization that is taking place right now, and always government policies are always taking place where we're trying to improve a place, and real estate will always be a major factor. Apart from the infrastructure of roads and schools, there will always be a need for houses. And so it's the best one because you can never go wrong. If you invest in real estate, you've invested in the future. It's not even now, it's in the future. So you're already aware that in 5 years' time, you're still making money, because that's the only investment you always make money while you're asleep.
Great. Jonathan is a classic example of Kenyans working abroad and investing back home, and he's done so through Kings Developers. And talking about investment, our Daring Abroad investment forums are still ongoing. Last week we were in Massachusetts. Many thanks to the Kenyan community in Massachusetts for your warm welcome. This weekend we've pitched tent in Dallas, Texas, and next week find us in Houston. And on that note, we come to the end of the show. On behalf of my team at Chams Media, many thanks for watching.
The arm basically gets audio data. What is your thought of a robot? And then transmits that, converts that audio data to sign, and then sign audio. That is for the disabled. They are able to communicate with somebody who is not disabled, that is not deaf, via signing.
So your first collection is, what are you collecting money for? So you say you're collecting money for a death, or someone has died, or you have a bereavement. So you just let us know, like the name, you put in a banner, how much you're planning to collect, and we create for you a payment link. And that payment link we send to the people who you need to collect money from, whether it's friends, family. And once money starts coming in, we have connected and integrated with WhatsApp.
What is Generation Z? Beyond age, it's a culture, laughter, and conversations that matter. Speaking of Gen Z podcast is back with Gen Z's finest, Esther Nyandoro, Jackie Masharia, and Michelle Namasaka. Tune in every Wednesday on Nation FM at 10 a.m. and stream your favorite episodes on nation.africa or www.ntvkenya.co.ke or wherever you get your podcasts. Speaking of Gen Z podcast, it's giving wholesome conversations.
This week on Cars with Big Boy Trev, we preview the Dakar Rally-inspired Toyota Hilux GR Sport 3 and take a look where this beefy Hilux can hold its forte against the rivals at the Ford Ranger Wildtrak and the Nissan Navara Pro 4X. Ever wondered how ABS works? We demystify how this crucial system works and how it is important in your well-being while on the road. And finally, we check out BMW's most important SUV, the BMW X3. We check out its design, technology, feature performance. It allows you to explore the full potential of this particular engine, safety and practicality. Catch this and much more on the Cars with Big Boy Trev this Sunday, 5 p.m. only on NTV.
Mortain Doom, with its trusted formulation, it provides protection in seconds. So spread the Mortain Doom message of how you and I, can fight to end malaria.
Mortain Doom, Kenya's #1 choice.
Get ready to have your mind blown.
Yo, what up, party people? It's your boy DJ Exclusive, aka the People's DJ, aka Bazu, and you are tuned in to Kwetu Mix on NTV.
We're bringing you the hottest show in town.
Hey, what's up, my people? It's your girls, your world of baddest.
Kwetu Mix na tuko NTV, au sio? Lena Bambam, Kwetu Mix kuna ubaya.
From exclusive interviews with the biggest names in the game.
I don't announce. You wait for it.
My mom is my manager. Kwetu Mix on NTV.
To a DJ set that will knock your socks off.
Party people, welcome to Kwetu Mix.
And snippets from your favorite live performances. Don't miss out on the fun. Tune into Kwetu Mix every weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. only on NTV.
Sasa hiyo ni swali au hotuba?
Kwetu Mix, brought to you by Nescafe 3-in-1 Creamy White. Changamkia your potential.
The moment is yours. Seize the day. Changamkia your potential with new Nescafe 3-in-1 Creamy White.
Want to know the biggest story of the week? Do not worry. The Weekly Review got you covered. For in-depth analysis of politics, business, governance, as well as social issues, the Weekly Review covers it all. For well-researched, exclusive and investigative content, read the Weekly Review every Sunday in the Sunday Nation.
NTV, turning on your world.
A very good afternoon to you wherever you're watching us from. My name is Melita Oletenges, live from the Nation Center, Nairobi. Now, the 16th day of June is an important day for domestic workers. It is the International Day for Domestic Workers across the globe. And we shall be having that topic alongside my panelists in studio delving in this topic. We shall be discussing with Joan Gloria, the Deputy Secretary General of Kudea Blandina Bobson. I hope I got that correct. Director of Programs, Oxfam, and Crispin Kimani, Domestic Workers Transformation Lead, Center for Domestic Training and Development. Welcome all to NTV. And this year's theme is Protect Domestic Workers, Respect and Dignity for All. I'll start with you, Blandina. Perhaps, what does this theme mean to you?
The theme is one way of recognizing the value that domestic workers bring into our society and into our economy. Because for the longest, the domestic work sector goes unrecognized, their work is invisible, we undervalue their work. So on days like this is days to, say that we recognize what you're doing, we see the value in your work, we hear you. So we use such days to amplify their voices and tell, you know, the public that domestic workers do contribute to our economy. Without them, we wouldn't all be here, I believe, right now, but also they contribute to the well-being of the society, because we are all here, but if you have children, you probably have left them with someone who is taking care of them. And so that's the role that domestic workers play, just gluing, you know, the economy together and the society together. Yeah.
Right, Chris, coming to you, perhaps, what does this day mean to you and the theme?
Thank you, Melita. Well, for us at the Center for Domestic Training and Development, we firmly believe that domestic workers are the backbone of our economy. These people work tirelessly behind closed doors often, and as they work in our homes, they are able to ensure smooth operations of our homes, and that's why possibly me and you are here right now able to participate in this panel. So they're a very, very integral part of our economy. However, most of their efforts surely go unnoticed, just like Ms. Blandina said it, and the work they do is actually demeaned in some sorts. But on this particular day, we just want to ensure that the domestic work and the domestic profession is professionalized, is dignified, and is respected. So this day is just a day to celebrate domestic workers. I celebrate my own domestic worker back at home. And it's also a day to also advocate for their rights, because most domestic workers come from very, very vulnerable backgrounds. That's why they find themselves in this profession, actually. It's simply because they lacked the opportunity to be able to go through formal education system. Some of them are victims of various atrocities, including gender-based violence and child labor. But on a day like this, as we celebrate the passing of the ILO Convention C-189, which speaks about decent work for domestic workers, I believe it's also a good day to also push for their rights and also push for their protection. Yeah, thank you.
Joanne, perhaps what does this day mean to you, and in regards to the theme, protect domestic workers, respect and dignity for all?
Thank you very much, sir. This day is very important to us as a trade union that represent domestic workers. It is a day that shows domestic workers even being at the lowest cadre of workers, not like any other worker out there. They are being recognized, and not just nationally around our country, but globally. So when we have this kind of day, we feel like the workers who are in the lowest cadre have been able to be recognized as workers doing a great job. Is a work that is making any other work possible. Because like my colleagues have said, if we didn't have a domestic worker, probably you or I or all of us would not have made it to come to this place. And therefore, they are the most important people in the society generally. Recognizing domestic workers is a plus for us, trade union who are representing them, because it shows that they are being valued as workers like any other worker. So we are just taking forward this day to make sure that we advocate for their rights, for their recognition in the society, even to create awareness to the employers that domestic workers are not just workers that you can treat them just anyhow because they work in the privacy of your homes, but you have to treat them as workers, as you as an employer. The way you want to be treated by your employer, then you are also an employer of this domestic worker. It will be best if you also accord them the rights and the dignity they deserve at their workplaces. Yes.
We shall be speaking or hearing from domestic workers in the course of this discussion, just to also get their sentiments in regards to their challenges, as well as what they think the government and different institutions could do to better their working environment. But let's start with a question that cuts across, and I've picked from all your answers, is dignity. When we speak about dignity towards domestic workers, Blandina, what do we mean?
Dignity for domestic workers means a safe working environment for them. This current situation is that most of them, like he mentioned, are exposed to gender-based violence. So, you know, sexual violence, physical abuse, mental abuse at the hands of their employers. That takes off the dignity from them. Dignity also means paying them the minimum wage as prescribed by the Employment Act. But unfortunately, most of them are underpaid. Sometimes it's even irregular pay. So it's not a dignified way of living, considering that these are people who also have households and families to support, but we are paying them something very insignificant. And most of the reasons, especially for the living domestic workers, when you ask, the excuse is always, you know, she's living in my house, she's eating my food, she's using everything I have in the house, why should I pay her more, you know. Dignity is also, you know, contracting them, like formalizing that employment, not engaging them without having a contract with clear terms that, you know, this is what I'm going to pay you, these are your day offs, because most of them don't even have day offs. They work long hours, arduous hours, and then they are not remunerated for the same. So contracting them also gives them that security that at any point should they feel that their rights are being violated, then they're able to hold their employer to account. And also dignity is treating them as human. We have had instances where domestic workers are denied food, you know, in households, but because they also come from very sometimes poor backgrounds, they have no choice but to keep up with it because they want that little money that you're giving them. I don't think anyone would ever be comfortable with being denied food. It's so dehumanizing to think that this is someone you're leaving them to watch your children, to manage your household, but they don't even have the freedom to eat food in your own house. So that for me would be, you know, dignified work. Yeah.
Chris, the Center for Domestic Training and Development has been doing some work in regards to this. Perhaps, what are your sentiments when we talk about dignity to domestic workers? What do we lack and what should we uphold?
Thank you. Just to maybe add on to what Ms. Blandina was saying, for us also, other than the sentiments of Ms. Blandina, is also maybe professionalizing this domestic labor sector. Because as it is right now, the domestic labor sector is actually relegated to the lower cadres of society. It's seemed like the last option. Okay. You find most people who go and do domestic work are doing it because they can do no other work. Possibly, just like I said earlier, they didn't go to school, they weren't able to go through maybe a professional course and get some certification. But now us at the Center of Domestic Training and Development, key being on the training bit, we train these domestic workers through the NITA accredited curriculum on home care management to try to instill professional skills to them. Because we believe we cannot dignify this profession without professionalizing it. So now once a domestic worker is able to get certified training and they've gone through the course, one, it cuts across both ways, because one, now they're able to take up their duties well. They know how to actually manage domestic work and household tasks. This now in turn, on the flip side, helps to ensure that they have a smooth relationship with the employer. So once it is professionalized, we believe now from that point, dignity will just come naturally.
Right.
Yes, so it will be taken like a profession like any other, just like you're a journalist, me as a projects person. So actually now once we're able to professionalize this domestic labor sector, the dignity will just come smoothly. So we are very, very keen on professionalizing the sector through skills training and also through a lot of advocacy efforts.
All right, we'll come back to that. John, the Kenya Union of Domestic Hotels, Educational Institutions, Hospitals and Allied Workers, from where you sit, this has been a question that has predominantly been discussed in different quarters. But from where you sit, when we talk about dignifying domestic workers, even you as representing a union, perhaps what is the message you're trying to pass across?
As a union, we just want to say that according a domestic worker, their labor rights is you're giving them their human rights. All labor rights are human rights, and if you're not able to give one bit of labor right to this domestic worker, you have denied them a human right that what they deserve. So we are calling out to all employers of domestic workers to ensure that they give all the labor rights that a domestic worker deserves, so that they are able to be dignified in that sense. Because if you deny them, like for instance, the live-in domestic workers, whereby their working hours cannot be measured anyhow. It is difficult to measure their own the working hours of a live-in domestic worker. Therefore, you have exposed that domestic worker to working long hours. And considering that these domestic workers work in a private home of an employer, whereby no one is able to inspect there, no labor inspectors can walk into someone's private home and be able to inspect that what are the conditions of this domestic worker as an employer, as an employee, that is. So if we are calling out to employers of all domestic workers around the globe to ensure that they accord all domestic workers their labor rights, even as themselves, they cry for their own human rights. These are workers and they are human as well, and they deserve to be protected in terms of according them what they deserve as human and as workers as well.
Quite profound.
Yes.
We shall be listening to them in a few minutes to come. But amidst the hue and cry, Chris and Blandina, and Joanne as well, from domestic workers, the question that comes out most of the time is, how is our legal framework that governs the whole sector? I'll start with you, Blandina. Do you think we are there, or we have a long way to go?
I think we are there. We have an Employment Act, and domestic workers are recognized as any other worker, and it's clearly defined on the terms, how much they should be paid in different counties and all that. It's just that the enforcement that is the weakness that we are experiencing. Otherwise, if that Employment Act was enforced, we probably now would be advocating maybe for increase, the minimum wage, because also the cost of life has gone up, and whatever it is that is defined as the minimum wage is not sufficient for them. But now we're just here advocating for them to be paid even just the minimum wage, So the enforcement is the challenge. There's been advocacy also towards ratifying ILO Convention 189, which guarantees decent work for domestic workers. And this is important for us because then we are able even to advocate and protect for domestic workers who leave the country to go and perform domestic work in other countries. If that is not ratified, it kind of illegitimizes our efforts, because against what framework are we advocating for these rights of domestic workers? Yeah.
Thank you, Blandina. Follow up on that, Chris. We've seen delegations leave Kenya and venture into the Middle East or Saudi and other countries that we've seen now domestic workers work there. The question is, they have always worked under very adverse conditions, and this is evident even in our social media platforms. Chris, do you think the delegations that have been to these countries have been able to achieve a cohesive working condition for these domestic workers?
Sure. While we do believe that there's definitely some legal protection around domestic work, and especially in the labor migration space, the laws are there clearly. But now, just like Ms. Blandina was saying, the issue comes when it comes to enforcement. So while the legal framework is present, I believe it's not working as well as it should. So maybe it can be a clarion call to the key policy makers to try and push for the enforcement of these laws. And also, we've also been very, very heavily advocating for the ratification of these two key conventions. ILO Convention C-189, which speaks about decent work for domestic workers, and ILO Convention C-190, which ensures a workspace free from violence and harassment for all workers in Kenya. So currently, we've been in the process of pushing for the ratification, and we do know that particularly C-189 is in the public participation space, but we'd like to urge possibly maybe the government to try and fast track it a bit, because it will be able now to strengthen our efforts. We'll have something to ride on as we also push for the protection and pushing towards expanding the protection space of these domestic workers.
Thank you, Chris. Joanne, trade unions play a very integral part in what you're talking about. Perhaps what aspect of it do you think we should focus on keenly to ensure that we achieve the legal framework and also, just a good environment for domestic workers?
I will just add on what my colleagues have said. Indeed, we have good labor laws or legal framework exist in our country. The issue is implementation. So even if we talk about having other legal frameworks coming in place, why don't we first of all focus on how the existing good labor laws can get to be implemented by the employers or people who are supposed to implement? Because for instance, the labor laws of Kenya, they cover domestic workers because it does not discriminate them as a different set of workers, but it generalizes them under employees. And if an employee is not able to be given a contract, for instance, the labor laws recognizes both oral, implied, and written contracts. But most of the time you find that a domestic worker will work mostly under implied. They're just being called, just do this for me. Even themselves, they could be ignorant. They don't know that I'm supposed to be given a contract. Therefore, if the labor laws are clear that an employee is an employee, whether a domestic worker or an office worker, they should be given a contract. Why should then a domestic worker be discriminated from that? Therefore, from our side as trade union, we still call on those people who are taking domestic workers as their employees to ensure that they are also aware of what are the provisions of the labor laws or the laws that governs this set of workers or this sector, so that they are able to implement up to date, so that you are not missing out on why this set or this sector only that they're suffering. Why are we not hearing that perhaps workers in this studio are not crying out that they don't have written contracts? So we are calling out on everyone that they should know that these are also workers. They should be given their rights and ensure that we implement all laws that exist, so that it is just about doing the right thing that someone's deserve. Yeah, so also again, we call out there the government to ensure the ratification of Convention 189, which is key for us. They have played a very big role in the adoption of this convention. So it is very important to us as a trade union that represents this cadre of workers in ensuring that this convention is ratified, so that domestic workers, wherever they are, can be able to be accorded their labor rights as deserved. Yes.
Thank you, Joanne. Quite an in-depth analysis of the whole situation. Yes. We will be taking a break in the next 5 minutes or so, but just before we take a break, if my director Diana can just play us one of an interview we did earlier with one of those domestic workers. If we have Pamela Witi, can we just play that?
Kwa majina naitwa Pamela Awiti Ogol, mkaji wa Nairobi. Hii kazi yenye nafanya leo, nilikuwa nyumbani side za Kisumu, lakini mapato haikuwa inatosha. Sasa nilikuwa na watoto wanaenda shule. Sasa unajua nyumbani hakuna pesa ya maana. Sasa ndio nikadecide nikuje nitafute kazi, nifanye watoto wangu wasome na mimi mwenyewe nipate mahitaji yangu. Mimi naona serikali haitu protect kwa ajili kuna vitu tunataka serikali tupitishie kama C189 na C190 ndio tukue na mazingira poa kazini, kwa ajili huko kwa kazi tunadhulumiwa. Na saa zingine ukidhulumiwa, ukienda kureport hakuna action. Saa zingine mdozi anakufuta kazi without notice, na inafaa mdozi akikufukuza kazi without notice ni lazima kupe notice ya 1 month. Na saa zingine tukiwakilisha kesi yetu hata kwa labor, zinaendanga hivyo, na sasa tunasikia uchungu. Sasa kwa upande wangu sioni kama serikali inatutetea. Mshahara ni kidogo, maternity leave hakuna, sick leave hakuna, vitu mingi sana. Sasa hata tukipelekanga petition yetu hata kwa parliament wanatupromise, lakini hatuoni. Sasa mimi sioni kama hii serikali inajali sisi wafanyikazi wa nyumba, na sisi pia ni wafanyikazi tu kama wafanyikazi wengine.
Blandina, from that particular statement, would you want to weigh in on that, because she's echoing basically what you talked about before?
Yeah, that's the sad reality that they have to live in, and unfortunately it also comes from the perspective, like Joanne said, some of them don't know their rights. So I would get employed, I don't know that I deserve to get a contract, and you know, you just bear with the conditions that are there. And we have employers who just wake up one morning and decide, you know what, you're fired and you have to leave. We have employers who, you know, confiscate the identity, you know, documents of these domestic workers, so that then they're not able to leave. So it's like you are in bonded labor of some sort. You can't leave even if you wanted to. Aspects of maternity leave, you know. So it's really sad that most of the domestic workers, especially the ones that are in childbearing age, when you think that you have to start a family and are going to lose your job, you postpone that. Like, that's not a priority. You focus on making the money. So there needs to be something. I think formalizing, like he said, formalizing the sector is one step towards ensuring that they are contracted, like they would have proper employment contracting done. They would have, you know, contracts that have all this sick leave, you know, even NHIF and NSSF, which is something that is not paid for. So we underpay them. We don't pay for hospital insurance. We don't pay for their, you know, pension funds, and we still claim that they are workers. I don't think we are doing them right. These are people that at some point would not be able to continue doing this work. They would need something to fall back on. When they are unwell, they have to dig into their little, you know, money that you're paying them to go to the hospital. We don't even take them to the hospital. So in essence, if you look at it, it's just like abusing their human rights, violating their human rights. And in instances where they have wanted to actually join now unions like Kudeha, there are employers who don't like that, because then they know when they violate their rights, the union will represent them and there will be a problem. So anytime a domestic worker wants to join a union, they either join and keep it a secret, or just decide not to join, because that could also cost them their job. Sure. So there's a lot that we need to do, and it's in days like this where we continue advocating for this. But we need to change, like, the whole mindset that we have towards domestic workers, how we perceive them, how we perceive the work, and also the narratives that we propagate. It could be as simple as the names we use for domestic workers, you know, like demeaning names like Mboch, you know, Mfanyikazi, and all those things. It looks as simple, but when you're doing that, even the children pick up on it. The next generation would be looking at them as, you know what, they're just Mamboch too, you know. So we need to change the whole narrative against domestic workers, and we need to change how we perceive this kind of work and see it as valued work. When we do that, we would not have what we are seeing right now, where people are saying, you know, they don't deserve to be paid this much, they don't deserve to live in these conditions. Yeah.
Thank you, Blandina. I can see Chris is raring to answer that question, but hold that thought. We now take a quick break on our discussion on the International Day for Domestic Workers. Stay with us. We'll be back with more on this discussion. Just trying to balance, you know, it's a broad discussion. It's so I think now we'll just go into the specific question.
Hi guys. Wow, Sarah, your skin is glowing. What beauty soap do you use? And protected from germs. But Sarah, the beauty soaps I know don't give germ protection.
Dettol Skincare does. It combines the trusted protection of Dettol with 2 times moisturizers to protect my skin from germs and keeps my skin soft with a beautiful fragrance. Beautiful skin is germ-free skin.
moment is yours. Seize the day. Changamkia your potential with new Nescafe 3-in-1 Creamy White.
This week on Cars with Big Boy Trev, we preview the Dakar Rally-inspired Toyota Hilux GR Sport 3 and take a look where this beefy Hilux can hold its forte against the rivals like the Ford Ranger Wildtrak and the Nissan Navara Pro 4X. Ever wondered how ABS works? We demystify how this crucial system works and how it is important in your well-being while on the road. And finally, we check out BMW's most important SUV, the BMW X3. We check out its design, technology, feature performance. It allows you to explore the full potential of this particular engine, safety and practicality. Watch this and much more on the Cars with Big Boy Trev this Sunday at 5 p.m. only on NTV.
Mortain Doom, with its trusted formulation, it provides protection in seconds. So spread the Mortain Doom message of how we, you and I, can fight to end malaria. Mortain Doom, Kenya's #1 choice.
Thank you for staying with us and welcome back for this panel discussion we are having on this International Day for Domestic Workers. This year's theme is Protect Domestic Workers, Respect and Dignity for All. And just before we took a break, first of all, with me in studio is Joanne Gloria, Deputy Secretary General, KUDEA, Kenya Union of Domestic Hotels, Educational Institutions, Hospitals and Allied Workers, Blandina Bobson, Director of Programs, Oxfam, Crispin Kimani, Domestic Workers Transformation Lead, Center for Domestic Training and Development. Before we took a break, Chris, you were raring to answer what that domestic worker just talked about, and in particular, she said the government is not paying attention, to our plight. What do you think the government should do?
Well, I believe that the government is actually trying to some extent, because there's a lot of strides they've made. Just like I had mentioned earlier, we've been part of the public participation process towards ratifying the International Labour Organization, ILO Convention C-189 and C-190. So last year, during Labour Day celebrations, His Excellency the President had promised that that convention will be ratified this year. And since then, I can see that the government has been acting with a bit of urgency, trying to push towards its ratification and actually actualizing that request by His Excellency. But still, while the efforts have been made, I believe we can be able to do better. We can be able to fast track the process and do everything we need. Because as a member state of the International Labour Organization, we do believe that it's very, very, very important for the government to ratify these conventions. So my reaction to the domestic worker we just had, it's a story we hear all too often in the work we do. But maybe now this is just the point. As we celebrate them on this day, the International Day for Domestic Workers, our clarion call will be that domestic work is actually real work. It is a profession like any other, and it actually deserves the respect like any other professions. I usually say, maybe like, let's just, if you just try to imagine if domestic workers were to down their tools for a single day in Kenya, there will be pandemonium. Offices will be empty, hospitals will be empty, because all of these professionals you see around are able to work because there's somebody back home taking care of the kids, taking care of business, ensuring that each and everything and even our property are safe back home. So their rights, the domestic workers' rights, are surely human rights, and they deserve the dignity and the respect that any other professional in this great nation actually also gets in their place of work. So please, employers, let's respect our domestic workers.
Chris is saying without Mama Fua, the bachelors would suffer. Joan, coming to you. The question of what she said, that lady spoke passionately about being denied maternity leave. From where you sit, is this something that, you know, trade unions would be able to push for if they were included in a union, the domestic workers?
Yes, and I am very proud to say that Pamela is our member.
Okay.
And why she's able to articulate those issues is because we have, she has undergone a lot of trainings on their labor rights as domestic workers as part of our membership, because that is one of our role as trade union, to educate them on their labor rights, on the issues that touches them around the world of work. Issues of GBV, like Blandina mentioned, issues of social protection are key. And I would say that maternity leave is also one of social protection issue that is very integral to protection of these domestic workers. Maternity leave, I believe it has been enshrined in our labor laws, and it is coming out clearly. And like I said earlier, is that domestic workers have not been discriminated in our labor laws. So if labor laws says that a female employee should go for her maternity leave for 90 working days or 90 calendar days, why should, and it should be a paid leave, why should a domestic worker not be accorded that kind of rights? Like I said before, all labor rights are human rights. So if you deny a domestic worker a maternity leave, you're denying her her human rights for procreation. It's simply saying that you're not supposed to undergo that process as a female worker. Therefore, it's denying someone's human rights. And the moment a domestic worker gets pregnant, that is the end of their employment. Why? Why should it be an end of employment? And that means if we are all going to continue treating domestic workers like this, it means that the procreation also is going to be less at some point, because these are also part of human beings or citizens of Kenya who are supposed to kujenga nchi. Yes. So it is very important for us. We just want to say that employers out there, you should know that a domestic worker is an employee, just like you yourself. The rights that you're crying out for to be given to you, they are the same rights you should give to your domestic worker. So we normally say as a trade union, if you're not able to afford, then don't hire, because the law is very clear. That's what the legal people normally say, and it's truly very clear, because it will come after you. And most especially when a domestic worker is our member, and they have gone through trainings like Pamela, who knows her rights, who knows that she needs to have a safe and good working environment so that she's able to deliver on her duties as well. Yes.
Thank you, Joanne. Now let's get into the specific work that your different institutions do. Blandina, starting with you, Oxfam has been at the forefront of care and programs for domestic workers. What have you been able to achieve, and what are some of the shortfalls that you see? Here, we still have a lot of work to do.
So we started programs on care work back in 2014. Just advocating for the recognition of care work. But when we got into the sector, when we started our programming, we realized there isn't much evidence that exists that can help us, build programs that are based on evidence. We were not very clear on the needs. So since 2014, I think up until 2020, in as much as we were having grassroots interventions in some of the informal settlements in Nairobi to try and, first of all, advocate for redistribution of care work roles within households, we were also doing a lot of research. The key one that we did is a household care survey that was looking at how much women spent on doing care work. And I believe it's because of that specific evidence that we were able to influence the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics to undertake a time use survey, nationwide time use survey, and it's the first ever in the country, to just look at where women, spend most of their time. Of course, other genders were included, but more specifically, the target was women. As a result of that, now we have the State Department for Gender in developing a national care policy, which is also one key framework that we need to be able to protect domestic workers and accord them decent work. So it's now in its draft stages, but we are hoping this will be finalized as well. The other key thing that we have done, so we don't only advocate at the national level, we try to link national to global level issues. So we are also advocating for, we are calling it a feminist economy, and this is an economy that recognizes how much care work contributes to it, not just in monetary values, but also looking at the well-being of the society. I did say at the beginning that we rely on domestic workers and care work to ensure that there's societal well-being. But unfortunately, even as we call for the recognition, the angle that not just Kenya but most of the governments have taken are just how much does care work contribute to the GDP. In 2022, I think the domestic work sector contributed about 79.4 billion to the GDP. So you can tell it's very important.
Indeed.
But we are not giving it the value that it deserves. But now we want it to go beyond just the monetary values and look at the societal well-being and have these matrices included in how we measure the value of domestic work. So that's the other thing that we are doing. Then in terms of programs, we continue to mobilize resources aggressively, and I say aggressively because again, most donors are also not in that space where they understand the importance of care work. So if you tell them when you invest in care work, you actually are empowering women economically, they don't see the connection, and it's all linked to the time poverty that care work causes. Someone spends so much time doing care work, they don't even have time to engage in other activities. So we're lucky that we have the Global Affairs Canada, who has funded this Time to Care project, and it allowed us to expand beyond Nairobi and Kiambu County. So we're implementing also in Nakuru and Mombasa. Nakuru and Mombasa because they're also the hubs for the migrant workers.
Yes.
Yeah. So resource mobilization, research, but also programs which we implement through partners. Kudeha is one of our partners who now do the grassroots interventions, mobilize, organize domestic workers, educate them on their rights, skilling. Yeah.
All right. We shall come back to the challenges, of course. You've mentioned their lack of resources, which is a key subject we shall be discussing. But Chris, back to you. Center for Domestic Training and Development. I believe you work closely with the domestic workers. Perhaps what have you been able to achieve in terms of bringing them together and also training them, not just on their rights, but also their work environment as well? Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Bwana Melitas. So the Center for Domestic Training and Development, also known as CDTD, is a non-profit that was founded by our founder and executive director, Miss Edith Morogo, in the year 2001. So over the last 2 decades plus, that's around 23 years thereabout, we've been running a project or a program known as the Domestic Workers Transformation Pillar, and it's the program which I currently lead at CDTD. So basically what we do under the Domestic Worker Transformation Pillar is to try and empower domestic workers and also advocate for their rights. We've been doing this through a multifaceted approach. So first and foremost, we mobilize and we self-organize these domestic workers into community-based hubs. We are currently running 10 community-based hubs within Nairobi metropolitan area in the low-income or informal settlement areas such as Mathare, Mukuru Kayaba, Mukuru Ruben, Mukuru Kwanjenga, also in Githurai, in Waroko. So all of these catchment areas where most of these domestic workers come from. So what we do, once we are able to organize them, they are able to identify leaders amongst themselves, and we are able to offer them training at the grassroots levels. So we offer training in various spaces. So now that's the second thing we do. After we mobilize them, we offer training. So we have institutional-based training where we take them to our institute in Githurai, the East African Institute of Home Care Management. So they're able to go through the home care management course, which is accredited by the National Industrial Training Authority, NITA. So that's the first training approach. The second approach is that we are able to go to the grassroots levels, to these communities where these domestic workers ka. Hawa tunaitanga mamafua wenye wanakanga pale kwa mawe. So as they wait for work, we're able to take like maybe 1 hour in a community hall, take them through various aspects of the home care management course, whether it's maybe things like laundry. They're taught how to read the care labels, how to handle various types of detergents. When we go to cooking, they're also taught how to prepare meals, how to bake, how to cook some of these nice meals for the employers. So the course is broad and it covers various aspects, including even pet care, for example. So once we train them, we are able to now link them with meaningful employment, decent work. So we usually place domestic workers through our own database of employers. Over the past 20 years, we've interacted with so many employers and we have a rich database. So we place them with the minimum wage here in Kenya, and they're able now to get finances to be able to better their lives. Other than our database of employers, we've also been able to partner with a lot of domestic worker placement agencies, the ones which locally we usually call them bureaus of some sorts. So we've been partnering with ethical bureaus through also an association known as the House Managers Agencies Association. It's an association of these bureaus. So we are able now to also source for meaningful employment for these trained domestic workers through that channel.
Chris, you've talked about minimum wage.
Yes.
In Kenya,
yes.
What is the minimum wage for our domestic workers?
Awesome. So in cities, the minimum wage is 15,201.65. That is in current cities. In municipalities, it's 14,100 shillings, while in other areas, it's 8,400 thereabout. So that's the current minimum wage in Kenya. So if you are placing them here in Kenya, specifically in Nairobi, we ensure that they at least get above the 15,000 Kenyan shillings, which is mandated by the government.
Do you think many employers have adhered to this, or there's still a back and forth, and how should this be addressed?
Yes, so definitely there's been some push and pull. Some employers are willing because number one, they're getting value for money. That's why I was saying once we professionalize this labor sector, the domestic labor sector, it will be very easy to actually push for some of these things. Because they're not just getting a domestic worker, they're getting, per se, it's like a house manager. This is someone who understands how to run the household. This is someone who creates meal plans, someone who can take care of your young ones very, very well, someone who can even take care of the elderly, because the home care management course, which was approved by NITA, and actually the process of creating this curriculum was actually initiated by our executive director, Miss Edith Morogo. So it's a very broad curriculum, and it covers various spaces. So once they're trained, it's very, very easy now to negotiate for a good pay for them, because the employers can see the value for money. As in, once you leave that domestic workers in the house, your mind is free to go and work, knowing that everything at home back is safe. Yes, so then just after the employment bit, the next thing we do, we also offer them access to financial inclusion. So we've been trying to include them into the mainstream financial system by partnering with a SACCO known as the Domestic Workers SACCO. It's a SACCO which was started by domestic workers through an association known as the Domestic Professionals Association of Kenya. So we work closely with the Domestic Workers SACCO, and we run a program known as Moneywise Domestic Worker, where now these domestic workers are able to know how do you use your money. Hakuna pesa mingi ama pesa kidogo. That 15,000 which you get, how can you be able to apportion it such that you're able to save, and now through the SACCO, once you save, you're able to borrow and you're able to invest. Then other now than the financial literacy bit, we are also very, very heavy on advocacy. We've been advocating for the rights of these domestic workers and trying to push for the government to actually strengthen the legal framework. And we also offer protection services, safe spaces for victims of these atrocities such as sexual and gender-based violence, and even child labor. We've been able to rescue children who are working in the homes as domestic workers. So through our shelter, the Talia Agla Girls Shelter, and the National Shelters Network, which we as at CBTD at the Secretariat, we're able to ensure that all of these victims of these atrocities under the hands of rogue employers are able to find safe spaces where they can be able to be rehabilitated and also now reintegrated back into the community. And we also try to offer them access to legal services through our various partners who we work with.
All right, Chris, and I'm sure the domestic workers appreciate what you do. Back to you, Joanne. As a union, how do you protect the well-being and the rights of domestic workers?
Thank you very much. As a union, you know, trade union is an association formed by workers. So first and foremost, we organize domestic workers for the purpose of recruiting them into the union. One major challenge here is that joining a union is under freedom of association. It is not a forceful thing that one has to be. When you are a worker, you just join a union. It is just free of will. So we organize domestic workers. We try to mobilize them so that they can join the union as a member. After they get to be members, that is when we come in and try to protect their labor rights. First and foremost, we train them in terms of their labor rights, to understand who they are, to understand that they are a worker and they have rights, because most of them, they could, like at the moment, the workers that are working in Nairobi are fetched from the countryside, up countries. Because they say, the employers in Nairobi say that hawa wa Nairobi wamejua mengi sana. So probably wamejua mengi kuhusu haki yao, and they are afraid that I'm not able maybe to work with this one who has known their rights. So we first, after recruiting them, we educate them, we train them, we build their capacities to know their rights, first of all, that they have a right as a worker to acknowledge that domestic work is work like any other. Secondly, on other emerging issues around the world of work, issues of GBV or SGBV like we mentioned earlier. Remember, these are workers that are prone to such issues because they work in the private closed doors of employers, whereby I'm not able to work in there as their representative and be able to check the conditions they work under. So they are left vulnerable because they work for that one employer one-on-one, not a company or a set institutions that they work formally. So after training them on their labor rights, the other issues, emerging issues, social protection also, which is a very important part of labor rights, we ensure that we build their capacities on them. We also offer legal assistance for the domestic workers as one way of protecting them when a member has been faced by these issues that they have mentioned themselves, and many other issues that we know ourselves at the back of our minds. They are free to walk into the office as a member, and we pick up their grievances. Some we sort out immediately with the employer. We have employers who are willing to sit down with the union and listen to the issues of domestic workers. We don't want to just say that all employers are bad, no. So we iron out the issues immediately with the employer, and those cases that are beyond us, that we could not sort out in the office, we have a channel to follow as provided in the labor laws. So we report the issues to the Ministry of Labor, where a conciliator is appointed, and then we sit with the conciliator, the employer, and then the worker plus us, the representative. We sort out the issues. If in case the issues are not sorted out at that particular moment, and now the conciliator can issue a letter of and resolve disputes, whereby we now report the case to the courts. Mind you, in all this process, if that domestic worker was a member, we don't charge them. That is their legal rights. As a member of trade union, you're not allowed to be charged. It is our responsibility now as a trade union to represent them even in that state of dispute resolution. So if a case has been furthered to the court, one great advantage of being a union member is that as a trade union we have been given right to represent domestic workers even at the court level. It is not a must that we get an advocate. So
John, allow
yes.
me to ask you,
Yes.
just at that particular juncture, when you find that a domestic worker is culpable, because we also have issues of security,
Yes.
indiscipline here and there, when you find that they are culpable, what are
Yes.
some of the measures that are taken?
Yes, so one of the issues that we train domestic workers is to relate well with their employers. Remember, the law provides cuts across. It provides right for the employer and it provides right for the domestic worker. So if a domestic worker is the one on the wrong, we tell them openly and we tell them the consequences of doing that kind of thing. We don't hide from them or we don't lie to them that this what you did is just right, we can just defend you on that. Remember, we've even seen domestic workers who have killed their employers,
right,
or committed murder for that case. So in such cases we separate issues. We will handle the labor matters, and for those criminal cases we refer them to the relevant authorities. Yes.
Thank you, Joanne. We have more domestic workers to listen to. Diana, if we have Evelyn Osinde and Peter Oworo-Kelo, maybe can we listen in?
Kwa majina naitwa Evelyn Osinde Senerwa, ninafanya kazi Kilimani. Uhusiano wangu na mdozi mwenye niko na yeye ni single. Yeye ni single, sasa hapatikani kwa nyumba. Sasa tuko wawili, mimi huwa na take care na usafi na huyo mwingine ana take care na watoto. Sasa yeye kupatikana ni ngumu, lakini ni shida kulipa. Hapo upande wa kulipa, changamoto wadozi wengi, ukiuliza pesa nikaa umefanya kazi, lakini ukiuliza pesa nikaa unaomba na unataka haki yako, ambapo umefanya kazi unataka ulipwe haki yako.
Quite very funny reaction there from Evelyn. If I could start with you. We have such scenarios. Weigh in on that.
I think that's very bold of her I mean, she clearly knows her rights. She knows when she has worked, she deserves to be paid. And unfortunately, this is not the case for most of the domestic workers. One of the challenges I highlighted is just, the perceptions that we have on domestic work. And it's not just for the employers. It's even how the domestic workers perceive themselves. They sometimes think they're undeserving of, good pay, safe working environments. They think when you employ them, you're actually doing them a favor. So they will keep up with that for as long as they can, because at least they have a house to, a roof over their head. They probably have some food. So they will just continue until when they can't anymore. Maybe they get a job, another job, and then they leave. So I think that's really bold, and it would be interesting to see if most of them can actually do that,
Chris, your sentiments?
Yes, quite comical, but very sad indeed, because actually denying anybody their pay is a crime in Kenya. So clearly domestic workers deserve to be paid on time and deserve to be paid the agreed rate that they agreed in the contracts. But other than that, I also feel like most of these the domestic workers tend to just live in these conditions because they have nowhere to turn to. They don't know their avenues to seek redress. Now that's where us as CSOs and possibly now the unions can come in and be able now to educate them more on their rights, such that you can be able to know, in case somebody does not pay you, what are the avenues that you can take. In case maybe an employer maybe tries to abuse you, what can you do? Some of them believe that their employers are untouchable. They believe that wow, any hawajiwezi, they're from a very, very low cadre of society, so they don't even have the confidence to be able to advocate for their rights. So but I believe a lot also needs to be done. We need to educate also more and more domestic workers about their rights. But also now on the converse, we also need to educate employers on their responsibilities. So at CDTD, we've been able to start an employer outreach program. So we've been reaching out to organizations and corporates, going through the HR departments, having a conversation with employers maybe during lunch hour to try and explain to them what are your responsibilities as an employer of a domestic worker. These people have rights. They're not just like any other worker. They're just there to help you be able to manage your home, but at the end of the day, they are not slaves. This is not slavery. It is an employment opportunity and an employment engagement.
Maybe Joanne is in a better position to tell us
if
the matter is in her interest or is it under arbitration. How would you handle such a case?
First of all, I would wish to say that it is so sad when you hire somebody and then you are not there. You are always absent. And then you go further not to pay them. What would you expect them to do? And then later you say that they misbehave, they do this and that and this. It's not a good thing. That is one of the grievances. We cannot say that that has gone to a stage of a dispute. If they come and they report such, it is a grievance. So we have mechanism of handling such. If we have a bold employee like Evelyn will allow us to reach out to their employer. You know, the moment you reach out to the employer, you have risked that job to lose that job. You're not guaranteed that you will also still stay with that employer, because they'll say that, oh, now you know your rights, now you know that I must pay you. They would definitely find ways to make sure that you they terminate your employment. So most of the time we encourage the domestic workers who are our members to hide their membership from their employers, because you see these jobs, as much as domestic worker is a free a job that you can just enter without requirements of high level of education, we still want also to protect the jobs that we have. As our mandate as Kudeha is to promote, protect and secure jobs for workers. So we are not, we don't want to put this worker in a position that they will definitely lose their jobs. So we first of all ask the employee the kind of employer they have, if they are approachable employers, if they are these employers that they can understand when someone has raised up a grievance, and if they are not willing employers to dialogue, then we have other ways. You can continue working for some time as you look for another employment, and then this is where we come in now as a dispute to seek claims for the moment they were not paid for the time they went without pay and yet they worked for you. Yeah.
Thank you, Joanne. Let's listen to another domestic worker, Peter Owuor Okelo.
Kwa majina naitwa Peter Owuor Okelo, nafanya kazi ya security pande ya Lang'ata. Moja ya my rights ni off, nafaa niwe na off, nafaa niwe na treatiwe kama wafanyikazi wengine. Na kuna leave inafaa ikue, ambayo hatuna kwa kazi yenye tunafanya sahizi. Kuna vile tunafaa tupangwe pale juu, kuna rules tunafaa sipitiswe. Ndio hata nikiwa pale niwe niko safe. Sasa pale nafanya kuna changamoto. Changamoto ya kwanza, pale tunafanya hakuna toilet. Inabidi tutoke hapo tuende place ingine hapo tuombe, ama tuende kwa soko tununue toilet place ya kujisaidia. Alafu msara pia haijafika kiwango yenye inafaa ifike kulingana na wages vile ilipitishwa. Union inatusaidia though bado kuna vile wanatarajia ifanywe ndio waanze kutusaidia juu hawawezi fikia mahali tupo waanze kuwaliza hata madosi wetu maswali.
Well, first of all, people have an assumption that domestic workers are majorly women, and now we have a man, Peter, there, highlighting some of the challenges, including what he terms as, harsh working conditions. I mean, lacking a toilet is quite an issue. You are the guy in the panel. I'd like you to react to that and tell us, how do you think employers could better handle such incidences?
Thank you, Melita. So first and foremost, it's actually good to understand what domestic work is. So according to the ILO, the International Labour Organization, domestic work is any work or any employment which is done in the household. This includes a wide range of professions. We have now the house managers or the house helps, as we call them here locally. We have people like cooks, we have cleaners, we have security guards, like the gentleman we just listened to. We have gardeners, we have home nurses. So basically anybody who is employed in a household or employed to work at an household, whether they live there, these are the live-in domestic workers, or whether they come every day, these are the live-out domestic workers, or the day bugs. All this is domestic work. And it's very, very important to recognize that there is gender balance also in that sector. While most of the domestic workers we know are women, there are also a lot of male domestic workers. In fact, there are some people who, when they are calling us for placement, they prefer having a male domestic worker in their homes. So it's sad to hear that somebody can be denied access to something as basic as a washroom during their work, and that's why we really need to do a lot of sensitization around this space. That denying somebody basic rights, things like food, the fair wages, the access to leave, the safe working conditions. If somebody is working in a hazardous environment, maybe they're handling tough detergents, they need things like gloves. If they're in the kitchen, they need to have the right gear. They also need to have access to privacy. Domestic workers deserve their own privacy also, even if they're living into your homes. And also access to justice in cases of conflict with their employers. So basically what we can do, I just believe that each and every employer should treat their domestic worker the way they would want to be treated at their place of work.
Chris, and just before we take a break, do you think this sort of deprivation leads to some sort of rebellion from these employees?
For sure, for sure. You see now, relationships are tricky, and this is it's an employment relationship. This is an employer-employee relationship. So for you to be able to manage it, yes, there's that aspect of professionalism, but now there's also the aspect of the humane side. Definitely, if you are treating somebody badly, clearly that person, number one, will have a very negative view of you, and they will lean towards maybe now doing something negative in your home. But if you are in a good working relationship with your employee, or even now in your case with your employer, you find there's a very, very easy working space, and you guys will be able to live in harmony without a lot of issues. So just treat the other person like a human, and I'm sure that together with that clarion call that the domestic workers' rights are human rights, it will be very, very easy to manage this kind of situations, and also to avoid the employer-employee conflict in the case of the domestic labor sector.
Thank you, Chris. At this point, we take a quick break. We'll be back with more on this discussion, of course, now delving into matters to do with how these employees are treated, domestic workers are treated, and how you, as an employer, should be able to appreciate them in your household. We'll be back. Stay with us.
Colgate Herbal is formulated from a unique blend of natural herbs and is scientifically proven to strengthen teeth and keep gums healthy. Try Colgate Herbal, scientifically proven for strong teeth and healthy gums.
Join Property Focus every week as we walk you through some of the latest house designs, property, hot deals on land for sale, modern furniture, trendy kitchens, finishes, and also get to hear experts' opinions on matters architecture, building construction, and real estate. Now, catch the show with me, Peter and Gigi, every Sunday at 5:30 p.m. only on NTV. Let's go.
Get ready to have your mind blown. We're bringing you the hottest show in town.
Yo, vipi wazee, Nicky Big Fish hapa.
This is your boy Shara Makao aka Mzee Mzima.
Unataki kwetu mix manze timam.
From exclusive interviews with the biggest names in the game.
Huwezi sikia music na ukose kuona dance. Na huwezi ona dance bila muziki.
Calligraph Jones, respect the OGs. Yeah!
To a DJ set that will knock your socks off.
5 to 6. It's all about Kwetu Mix, everybody.
And snippets from your favorite live performances. Don't miss out on the fun. Tune into Kwetu Mix every weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. only on NTV.
Kwetu Mix, brought to you by Nescafe 3-in-1 Creamy White. Changamkia your potential.
The moment is yours. Seize the day. Changamkia your potential with new Nescafe 3-in-1 Creamy White.
Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us on this discussion on the International Day for Domestic Workers. The theme is Protect Domestic Workers, Respect and Dignity for All. I've been in studio with panelists from Oxfam. We've had Blandina Bobson, Joan Gloria from Kudeya, and Crispin Kimani from CDTD. Now, earlier on, we had voices of domestic workers, and they've aired out some of their challenges, hue and cry dominating some of their sentiments. But we've not had employers, but I believe sitting in the panel are employers. So let's start with you, Blandina. The first interaction we have with an employee, now wearing an employer's hat, what is that? What is that thing you're looking for?
Is whether they're, first of all, they're able to do the job. Of course, you ask about experience, you know, their past experiences in doing the work. I need to know that I'm leaving my children in safe hands. So that's the first thing, but also their conduct. If you're leaving them to take care of children, you need to know that you're leaving them with someone who will be able to conduct them in a manner that is acceptable in front of the children. So that's the first thing. And then there's also how they want to be remunerated. And, you know, just like I would apply for a job and negotiate, I think they deserve to do the same. So it's to ask them. But I already know as an employer that there is a minimum wage. And then from the minimum wage, then you can start negotiating depending on the amount of work that this person is going to be doing. There's also, now that I have been doing this work, is also the realization of that these people also need to be represented. Like the two domestic workers that spoke and I was mentioning earlier, I am not sure they will have their jobs after this because they boldly spoke about their situation, and most employers would not want that. But as an employer, I should be aware that these people have a right or a right of freedom of association. If they join, like, you know, Kudeha, they don't have to worry about speaking about their issues because then the union is representing them. And there's always, you know, the protection when you're in numbers. It's not me, Blandina, speaking about my issues, but it's us domestic workers coming together and saying, you know what, this is what we are experiencing. And it's very hard then to victimize someone. So those are some of the aspects that I think are key. And also the NHIF bit, they fall sick in our homes. I would not always have money to, you know, pay off my pocket for their medical treatment. So the best way to just ensure that she gets, you know, health services when she needs them, and I also don't have to worry that I might not have cash right now to take them to the hospital, is to pay for their national hospital insurance. And, you know, for as long as they're with you, it's my responsibility to ensure that that is paid for. that they have a break as well. They're human. They're not machines. They're not robots that they can work, for 24 hours. So I've seen, the trend is to allow them to take a break on Sundays, do what they want to do. But it's not just about that. But there are certain times, like, we go home to the villages over the Christmas holidays, over Easter. They also deserve that, to go and be with their families. So even as we're thinking about that, is to ensure that they get their breaks, they get their medical, services. They're able to, also unwind as humans. They're able to spend their time doing other things, and also to formalize all this and to ensure that then they're able to hold me to account is to ensure that they also have a contract, that all these things that we have agreed upon are actually on paper. And when I'm not able to fulfill my responsibilities as an employer, they can actually hold me to account. They can go to court and say, what, this is what we agreed upon. This is what my employer is doing to me. Yeah.
Chris, in the same breath, there have been wide-ranging concerns by employers that I could go to work and come back in the evening, and my nanny or my farmhand is not at home. And echoing what Blandina has said, perhaps in training, how do you inculcate this into these domestic workers?
Great. In the home care management curriculum, which is accredited by the National Industrial Training Authority, NITA, there is also an aspect of life skills. So they are able to be taught their obligations also as domestic workers once they are in these homes. We usually say these issues around domestic workers are cross-cutting, or they are double-edged like a sword, not one-sided like a panga. So while we are advocating for the rights of these domestic workers, we also need to let them know their obligations once they are in that home.
Indeed.
There are very pertinent issues, matters like pertaining towards privacy, which now that's where the aspect of the contracts comes in. Maybe you can have an NDA clause inside your contract to ensure that whatever happens in your home stays in your homes. There's this habit of some rogue domestic workers coming up in cocoons, discussing what happens in people's homes, which is quite sad. So we try to professionalize them by actually training them their obligations, and through the life skills unit they're able to know how to even manage conflict or even avoid conflict with their employers. So it's very, very important that these skills are actually transposed to these domestic workers, because clearly, just like I started saying in our first few minutes of this interview, the only way to professionalize the domestic labor sector is to ensure that there is training, proper certification. That when your domestic workers comes to your house, is she trained? Does she know what is expected of her? Or are you getting a domestic worker, you have the dishwashers, you have the washing machines, you have the sophisticated equipments in your homes, but the person who you are getting from maybe up country has never been exposed to some of these things. That already is an avenue for conflict, because they will do what is not expected, and maybe now you might find yourself reacting in a negative way or the other. So let's all ensure that our domestic workers are trained. Even if you have your own domestic worker, you can be able to maybe even procure these training services for her, or getting in touch with people like us who are able to now train them and professionalize them in these spaces. I believe that will be the first and easiest way to ensure that these conflicts between the employers and domestic workers are resolved, because once the domestic worker is able to meet the obligations, and also now the employer understands that he or she also has obligations to these domestic workers, I believe there will be no reason for conflict.
Joan, there's a question I wanted you to just delve into deeper, the question of health, because when a domestic worker falls sick or ill in your house as an employer, now I want you to wear that hat as an employer, what do you do? Is it your responsibility primarily, or it's theirs?
Domestic worker being in my house, I want to believe, especially a live-in, that one is my responsibility. I'll treat them as one of my, say, as much as we have a employment relationship, as one of my family member, an advocate of labor rights for domestic workers, I should also be a practitioner. I should not be preaching water and drinking something else. So definitely, if a domestic worker, first of all, I'll enroll them to the social health platform, whereby they are able to be covered in terms of health matters. But there are these incidences where a domestic worker is maybe sick all of a sudden and you need to attend to her. Definitely you will not leave her, or for instance, if those platforms that caters for health issues still need some processes and procedures to be allowed to work, then definitely it will be my responsibility to ensure that that domestic worker is in a good state of health, because you will also not be able to get good services when you have someone who's not in good health working for you. So I will say that that is my responsibility as an employer. Yes.
Thank you, Joanne. Blandine, I'd like to wind down this conversation with the conventions that have been implemented by ILO and those conventions that you feel have not been implemented. What are some of those conventions and how important are they to ensuring the employment of domestic workers is in line with the domestic laws that govern their employment?
So the key important ones are two. Is the Convention 189, which guarantees decent work for domestic workers, and their rights and everything. And like I said at the beginning, why this is important, it's not just for the domestic workers that are working in the country. It gives us that legitimacy to advocate for the rights of domestic workers that work outside of the country. And also as a country, we the government is then presents itself as a government that is a strong advocate for human rights, because for as long as then this is not ratified, it is very hard to engage in those spaces when you know very well your government hasn't ratified this. And that is why we have cases of domestic workers from the Middle Eastern countries coming back, and you don't even know how you can represent them in those countries if as a government or if as a country we haven't ratified this. There's also the Convention 190, which is ensuring that workers work in environments that are free from violence, and so we also put domestic workers in that space. There's a lot of gender-based violence that happens in the private spaces, and I think Joanne said it's very hard to know if they don't speak about it. Right. But once we have that convention, it allows us, jointly with the other laws of the country, to actually enforce this and tell the employers, this is what these are the laws that you're contravening when you're exposing your domestic workers to this. But more importantly is the national care policy, which anchors all the care work that is being done. And with that, once it's institutionalized, what it will help us do is that it will kind of reinforce all the other policies and labor laws that exist. It is the one step I have seen that is a tangible step towards recognizing care work as valued work. And I think it's starting to get to that place where people realize we need care workers to be able to go about our business. And the first step that the government is doing to recognize it, and it makes it very easier to enforce it in public spaces and also in private spaces. For civil society organizations, I think the one thing that would need to even get these policies or laws enacted is the evidence. There's a lack of evidence in so many issues that surround domestic workers. Even as we talk about gender-based violence, we don't have updated data of the prevalence of gender-based violence for domestic workers. So that's something we are working to collect and then using it now to advocate or push and say, this is why we need these policies. This is what is happening currently. The lack of policies makes it very difficult to kind of demand for the rights of these domestic workers, and so then push the government and all the other stakeholders to come together and ensure that these are ratified. The lack of resources is a huge challenge as well. In terms of even getting these instruments ratified. Before you get to that ratification process, and the colleagues who have been involved, there's numerous engagements that happen, and sometimes the resources are lacking even from the government. So we mobilize resources, pull resources together, and meet, come and discuss what needs to be done. Now the public participation, also quite an expensive exercise, it needs resources. So I think the call is, even for the donors as well, to just know that this is an important sector that they need to invest in, because it allows it's very important for our economy. It allows, you know, the domestic workers to enjoy their rights, but more importantly, it allows for even the government to be able to kind of take up its responsibilities as a government. Yeah.
Thank you, Blandina. Chris, she's talked about the conventions that have not, you know, been ratified. What are some of the obstacles that stand in the way of ratifying? Because that's also a key issue.
Okay, so number one, even before maybe I speak about the obstacles towards the ratification of these two key conventions, it's also good to know that there are also some conventions that pertain towards the work of domestic workers which have been ratified. Maybe like the ILO Convention 182, which speaks about the worst forms of child labor. That's the worst form of child labor convention. It was ratified by Kenya in the year 2001. So, and clearly, child labor is very prevalent in the domestic labor space. So this is one of the conventions which has been ratified, and June was actually the month for World Day Against Child Labor. Yes, so now towards the obstacles. Number one is resources, as Ms. Blandina rightfully put it. We've been in the process of trying to push for the ratification, and we've also been engaged in the public participation bit for the ratification of ILO C189 and C190. And clearly it's a very expensive process, especially now when it comes to public participation. You have to engage all key stakeholders, you have to engage the public. It's quite an expensive exercise. And maybe now the clarion call would be to potential funders to actually now allocate resources towards this kind of activities, because once these key conventions are ratified, they will give us something to ride on as we try to also seek justice for some of the perpetrators of these atrocities against domestic workers. So the key one is lack of resources, because I do believe that currently the commitment from government is there, all the way from the top seat, because His Excellency the President actually promised to ratify these conventions during the Labor Day of last year, and also during this year's Labor Day. The Ministry of Labour Cabinet Secretary, Ms. Florence Bore, was also able to actually give an update on the progress for ratification. I believe the main issue which is actually delaying this process is the lack of resources, and we're hoping that key partners and stakeholders and funders will be able to actually step in a big way to be able to support this process.
Okay. Joanne, I'll come back to you, Blandina, in just a minute. Joanne, the ratification of ILO 182 against child labor, as Chris has said, is still is one of those issues that has been ratified. But in isolated cases, we still see some employers employing underage children to work for them. How do you deal with this matter, and how do you curb this not to progress?
That is a very important question, because if the adult domestic workers are still fearful to walk straight into the employer's face and tell them that I am a member of trade union, how about this little girl or this this child who's working in the vicinity of an employer? It is very difficult and for them, because they will if an adult domestic worker faces these numerous kind of injustices at their workplaces, then children are prone to be exploited more. Therefore, it is quite a sensitive topic and a difficult one, because you will not know that that particular house or that particular employer has hired a child, a minor. So we've been asking the adult domestic workers, whom we have been able to sensitize them, to be a watchdog for us also in their areas of work. If they can encounter an employer or a child who's working as a domestic worker, they can at least report to us, because the law also don't allow us to recruit children, domestic workers. So if we get such cases, we will refer them to the relevant authorities for action to be done and for them to be accorded their rights. Because even if the labor rights gives provisions of employing children maybe between 13, from the age of 13 to 16. Those are still minors, whereby the Education Act, the Educational Act requires them to be in school undergoing the basic education. So this kind of inconsistencies also in the law is what we need to sit down as stakeholders and social partners so that we can find way to harmonize this kind of laws, because these are the loopholes that causes this kind of bad situations for children as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Joanne. I saw Blandina with your hand up, maybe a burning issue.
Yeah, I just wanted to also clarify, like even as we talk about resources as a challenge in terms of fast-tracking these processes, I believe the government also needs to put aside resources for this. I mean, we started the advocacy towards ratification of C-189 in 2018. How do we explain that, 2024, and we're still talking about the same thing? And when you ask, the challenge is resources. But we are taxpayers, we pay taxes, they need to budget for these processes. We cannot be dependent on donor funds, because at some point they will exit. It doesn't mean that as a country we can't run our own issues because the donors are not present. So a strong call is also for the government to prioritize this. One way they can show commitment is by actually allocating resources for some of these processes. Yeah.
And I believe that comes at a very timely time when we're discussing matters, finance bill and all that. That's a good place to wind down this discussion. As we close, your sentiments, employers especially, and in terms of upholding the dignity of the employees who are domestic workers. 30 seconds as you wind up. Blandina.
My sentiments is that all employers have to realize that they cannot do without domestic workers. This is a key worker that we need for the day-to-day engagements within our different spaces, but also for our economy. So we cannot wish them away. We just have to do the right thing to accord them the dignity that they deserve as workers, and as per the different laws that we are aligned to. So employers just pay them what they deserve, give them good working conditions, formalize these engagements, and they will do a good job, I believe.
Chris?
Yeah, so to all the employers, let's just respect domestic workers. Let's accord them the same respect that we get from our employers. And to all domestic workers, a happy International Domestic Workers Day. You are the backbone of our economy, and we cannot be able to do it without you. You are valued, you are treasured, and please carry on doing the good job that you are doing back at your homes. Thank you so much.
Right. Joanne, your final word?
Thank you so much. I want, before I talk to employers, I want to talk to the main employer, that is the government, through the Ministry of Labor, to also consider reviving and commissioning to action the Domestic Workers Wages Council, because this is a sectoral council that is going to speak out the issues of domestic workers as a sector per sector itself, and also to set out the minimum wages that is able to be implemented by employers. So it's my call as a union that the government, the Ministry of Labor, to ensure our to commission to work these Domestic Wages Council, and also to our good employers. Of course, without you also we don't have work. So we ask you that with your goodwill, domestic worker is a worker like you, and this worker needs the rights that you need. They also need, and they are their legal rights as enshrined in our labor laws. And so if you can be able to accord them these rights, I believe we can be able to have an harmonious way of working between the employer and the employee, and we can have us together, the employer and the employees, building the country, considering that domestic workers are the pillars of care economy, and there's nothing much we can do without the care in this country. Thank you very much.
Indeed, what a good way to put it. And of course, it is a symbiotic relationship between the employer and the employee. And of course, many thanks to the different institutions and organizations that are defending the rights of domestic workers. My name is Melita Oletenges. It's been a pleasure to host you for this discussion on the International Day of Domestic Workers. My guests in studio have been Joanne Gloria, the Deputy Secretary General, KUDEA; Blandina Bobson, Director of Programs, Oxfam; Crispin Kimani, Domestic Workers Transformation Lead, I believe, at CDTD. Many thanks for joining us and making time for this discussion. Until next time, have a good afternoon.
week on Cars with Big Boy Trev, we preview the Dakar Rally-inspired Toyota Hilux GR Sport 3 and take a look where this beefy Hilux can hold its forte against the rivals like the Ford Ranger Wildtrak and the Nissan Navara Pro 4X. Ever wondered how ABS works? We demystify how this crucial system works and how it is important in your well-being while on the road. And finally, we check out BMW's most important SUV, the BMW X3. We check out its design, technology, feature performance. It allows you to explore the full potential of this particular engine, safety and practicality. Catch this and much more on the Cars with Big Boy Trev this Sunday, 5 p.m. only on NTV.
Mortein Doom, with its trusted formulation, it provides protection in seconds. So spread the Mortein Doom message of how we, you and I, can fight to end malaria. Mortein Doom, Kenya's #1 choice.
This season has been hectic. Where?
It was these big animals. I was like, hey, what is happening?
What could possibly go wrong? Literally, there was somebody who was flipped in the air.
We got very nice landscape shots.
It's a total upgrade in the editing technique.
Do you know why elephants in Tsavo are red? Have you ever seen a hippo capture?
You can't afford to miss this season.
Why don't you just leave us alone? You simply have no right, because he has done nothing wrong!
Take your anger out on me. You can both do that. I only want one thing from you. Please just let my son go free.
I do know exactly what you're going through, and it's what you deserve.
Where's JC?
I don't know.
Stop lying!
What do you really want, Eris? To kill your own brother? He'll come home to you in a coffin. Eris!
Fists of fate. The truth is not governed. The truth governs our beliefs, our faith, the trust we give, the democracy we seek. When held back, it always breaks free. Seek the truth. Set yourself free. Subscribe to read online at epaper.nation.africa. Daily Nation, the truth unfiltered.
Letters for Good. In Olkalau, Nyandarua County, Joanne Dungu is filled with joy as she expects her 9th child. But everything would change after the birth.
Uchungu siwezi iringanisha na ingine ya mtoto yeyote.
There's an untold story inflicting misery on thousands of women.
Be inspired by ordinary Kenyans beating the odds through extraordinary determination. Watch M-Pesa Foundation's Letters for Good this Sunday on NTV.
Na kila unapojaribu kumdhuru mwingine, tajumiza na wewe.
Tony, moyo wangu ushaonja mauti. Nishasalitiwa. I'm not afraid.
Hii swali na gani? Imagine Missy Junior hata kuniterrogate.
Mbona unapenda sana kujihusisha na mambo ya Little Rosa?
Hello to you too. I'm Rose Adams.
Alicia. Hakuna na... Hii ni mimi Alex.
To get Missing Vibes as your Skiza tune, dial *811 *924#.
Skiza na Nation.
Get ready to have your mind blown.
Naweza kuonelea kuwa wakati wote mahakama ambapo inaendelea lazima kuwe na polisi ambao wako na silaha na ambao wameidhinishwa na mwenye anasimamia hali ya usalama katika hiyo koti. 5, tumeweza kuonelea kuwa hakuna kesi zitaweza kufanyika katika zile ofisi ama private chambers za mahakimu, majaji, na kesi zote zitafanyika kwenye venye tumesema kwenye vyumba ambavyo vimeidhinishwa, lakini virtual proceedings zinaweza fanyikia huko ndani. Lingine ni kuwa hakuna mtu yeyote ambaye ataweza kukubaliwa kuingia katika mahakama yoyote akiwa amejifunika uso kwa namna yoyote, unless ni kwa misingi ya kiafya ama usalama wa nchi. Wakenya wenzangu, nina uchungu sana kuona kuwa kifo cha marehemu kimeweza kuwa amekufa kama mataya. Watu wengi wameweza kutishiwa, majaji wameweza kutishiwa, magistrates wameweza kutishiwa, watoto wao wameweza kutekwa nyara, vyumba vya mahakimu na majaji na wafanyikazi wa judiciary vimeweza kuvunjwa kwa sababu ya kazi ambayo wanafanya. Vitendo vyetu vya kusitisha mahakama na vingine ambazo tumeweza kuelezea, tunataka kuwapatia bunge, executive, SRC na vitengo vingine vyovyote muda wa kwenda kujadiliana na kuweza kuimarisha usalama wa wafanyikazi wa mahakama na majaji na mahakimu. Asanteni.
Thank you. Yes, yes.
Just for record, kidogo tu Kiswahili inakuwa ngumu kidogo, watakuwa wakipekuliwa si kuporwa. Sawa sawa.
Okay. Yes, please.
Thank you for your question. We are collecting data as of now, but I can say from the top of my head that majority of the court stations, they have one permanent building that ordinarily holds court 1. Then the remaining courts, maybe courts, if it is if the court has two courtrooms, 2 magistrates, magistrate number 1 sits in a permanent court, but the other magistrate ordinarily sits in semi-permanent structures. For example, here in Gong, in Roiro, we hold in containers. In Siakago, we hold in a makeshift tent. In Keroka, JKIA, Mavoko, and even majority of our court stations, Kitale, there are many. And others are in deplorable conditions. They have walls which are substandard. They are sucking up water, and at any time, they may collapse. That's why we are saying they have to be standard structures. Thank you.
So that's it. Thank you very much for honoring our invite. Asanteni.
Okay.